Good evening and welcome to the Halcyon Podcast. I'm your host Lauren Risley. I'm live again. How cool's that? I thought I'd do a to-camera piece for a change, just because I haven't recorded a podcast like this in a little while. I wanted to change things up for the fuck of it. I swear on these. I don't dub them out because it's far too time-consuming and far too invasive on my real life of, well, this. Anyway, on this edition of the podcast, we're going to go around a little bit, but we'll get to the sports stuff that I usually cover in the podcast a little bit later on in the show, if it's all the same to you guys. I had a thought, and I'll segue from one thing into another so we can clickbait and talk about shit that I want to talk about. Watch the latest Venom trailer. Venom Tom Hardy is going to be a film that's releasing sometime in, I believe, August to October of this year. The infamous Spider-Man villain is getting his own film, given that he didn't get the best showing in Spider-Man 3, albeit I thought the graphics of him weren't terrible. It's just the fact that he constantly had to have his face open, which is the carnal sin of any superhero film, is that they don't get that fans want to see the superhero. They don't want to see the actor behind it. It's just, it's an antiquated way of thinking, I know, but, you know, maybe give the fans what they want in it for a change. Anyway, so I was watching the trailer, enjoying it immensely because it teases enough of what you need and doesn't give too much information away about what the plot is and Spider-Man's interaction with him, if any. Tom Hardy's relationship with the symbiote is still not really clear as to how he comes into interaction with it. Anyway, the narrative seems to be along the lines that it focuses on his psyche and things that he loses. You know, he has cancer, he gets broken up with his girlfriend, he gets dicked by his newspaper as a photographer. There's a couple of statements he makes that I thought were interesting just because it made me reflect on things in my life, and you know, it's rare a trailer makes you do that. And there was a statement, he said there are things that change you, and you know, it could be this, it could be this, it could be this, and you were something, and then you were something else. Now, it made me reflect about something about my personality. I wanted to touch on this because it's a topic that I used to do when I first started doing the show. When I used to just focus on an idea and just run with it as far as a podcast was concerned, rather than talking about current events, which is what I do now. It's the idea of rejection and the impact that it leaves on you after the event and after you've supposedly recovered and you've evolved as a result. Let me take you back. Which wouldn't be that hard because you could just go back through my Twitter feed to the original tweets when I first started using it and to the implosion that happened. It's always best to be honest about what you are on Twitter because you've already posted it, so deleting stuff is just dishonest and disingenuous. I think I've only ever deleted one or two tweets and it's because they were misspelt and it made me annoyed. Anyway, point being, a few years ago I had a relationship with a girl. 4 or 5 years we were together and it ended really, really badly. You know, we'd grown apart and I hadn't helped because I'm a real asshole when I want to be. And imagine sustaining that over a period of time. It's a wonder she lasted as long as she did, to be perfectly honest with you. Now, at the time, it was my first significant parting in terms of relationship. No one had ever died in my family before then. My dad had left for Australia by that point, but again, it's not the biggest deal in the world. And my mum hadn't had the majority of her illnesses yet. So this was the first real event in my life, a cataclysm where I was used to it. I thought I had it forever. It went away, and I didn't fully understand or comprehend it at first. And then once it was over, it took me a prolonged period of time to recover emotionally from it. And then me get to a point where I felt like, right, I'm finally over this, finally ready to move on with the rest of my life. But then I started thinking about, well, that rejection, does it still linger to this day? And I mean, not that I've not necessarily recovered from it, but what indelible impact has it left on me as a person? And I wanted to touch on this because I think it's something that we as, just general, I think a lot of things in society at the moment are endemic of this feeling of rejection we have as a people. Me personally, I remember when this was all unfolding, that I used to still message this girl while we were going through a period where we were not trial separating, that would be too light a term. She was definitely gone and I definitely wasn't getting it. But I still felt like I could still talk to her. I still felt I could message her, letting her know how I was doing and hope she was okay, and telling her funny stories about what we used to do without really realizing how much of an idiot I was being. Now, after that, and before that, I'd like to think I was a pretty outgoing person in terms of my personality and in terms of how I addressed people. I was quite a jovial person, quite eager to be an absolute fucking idiot and a joke and a goof and all the rest of it, which is something that still lingers with me to this day. It's the reason why I'm able to get away with some of the things I get away with on the show, because I don't really care about my credibility being shot to pieces, because I can instantly turn on a mean face, and my family is blessed with having a temper that matches. Anyway, point being, after that, I think I did withdraw within myself to the extent where I never felt comfortable putting myself out there to that same extent again. It was always this somewhat restrained facade. I'd never felt like, as a result of this one girl saying that she could tolerate that aspect no longer, I felt that that was carte blanche from the world. That's everyone in the world saying effectively, every time you annoy us, we're going to leave. We're going to reject you. Now, I've got to be honest, that I think that has left an indelible impact on me, to the point where I still don't really feel like I can annoy someone the once and recover from it anymore. I think back to a couple of occasions where I've maybe had interactions with people and I've maybe goofed a bit too much or said something out of term, they've taken it the wrong way, and then I just assume, okay, well I guess we're not friends anymore, and that's that. Which is a tremendously immature and silly way to approach things, but nevertheless, it's embedded in my psyche now because it's the most fractious event that I can personally relate to. And the reason I had this thought, and the reason why the Venom trailer was so significant, is because he has all three. And, you know, in the trailer, if they play on this, it's going to be an interesting insight into the psyche of a person who might have been a decent person but ends up being a complete bastard. It makes me think about how we all are going, because I think it's fair to say that everybody in life has suffered some degree of rejection that we all think we've recovered from, and we like to believe that we've evolved past it, we've changed for the better. But in essence, it still lingers to some degree. Someone once said, experience teaches you what not to do. Youth and exuberance is the experience of just just taking it in and not judging it for what is and what is good, what is bad, what to do, what not to do. You just do. And the more life teaches you, the more you learn to regress and go in yourself and refine and hone and chip away at your personality. And it makes me sad, because I think had I not had that experience, I might have been different as a person in terms of the way I interact with the world. And the reason why I wanted to highlight it in my long sort of rambling way is because I want people to reflect upon it, because I think now that I've had kind of a little bit of an epiphany here, and the next time I encounter a situation where my heart drops a little bit when I feel like I've offended somebody, or they've not maybe taken something in the spirit of which is intended, or they didn't find me personally funny, that I shouldn't stop. I shouldn't stop being that, because that's who I am at heart, and any attempt to fight that makes me naturally sadder as a person, which if that experience taught me anything, it's that you can bounce back from anything in life so long as you give it enough time. But now what it's also teaching me is that you can never underestimate the impact it leaves on you, and when you think you've beaten it, it can resurface. I think there's a word they use for cancer. I can't think of the word, but if the tumour represents it after chemotherapy, for instance, if it's regression or something along those lines. Now, obviously, cancer is much more serious, but what I'm saying is, emotionally speaking, you can never underestimate just when you think you've gotten over something, that it's super easy to snap back into it. So if we are that as people, and I've always said that I believe a person is smart, people are stupid, i.e. you give someone with a reasonable mind and a reasonable intelligence set a question or an argument or a debate, you can usually get something out of it. Even the most staunch or stone-faced individual, they'll have time to think after the fact. Whereas you give a group of people something, it suddenly becomes the worst thing in the world, because you're leaving it up to the loudest voice being the right voice, the one that's the slickest being right. Things like this, rather than people taking time to appreciate and understand exactly what they're talking about. which is why in wider society at the moment I think we're all in such turmoil with ourselves, with each other, even though when you think about it, we're at a point where we're more connected now than we've ever been. Travel is easier. We all live, broadly speaking, better lives than we did 20 years ago because of our access to technology. You know, money isn't great. I'm not going to lie and say I'm swimming in money. I'm hardly a Scrooge McDuck here, but, you know, I never fear for my future. And yet somehow we find ways to become immensely depressed within our lives. I've been guilty of this on many occasions, but when you sit back and reflect upon the fact that you get to wake up the next day and start again and push for something a little bit different, I think it's important to remember that. And that the idea of rejection is something that I know governs my existence more than it should, having had this minor epiphany. I'll say it's minor, you know, most people are clever enough to figure this out for themselves. But what I wanted to do as a result of this was invite people to reflect on maybe a moment in life where you were rejected. It might not be by a partner or girlfriend like me, it might have been a job, it might have been sacked. It might have been for that big loan that you wanted for, you know, an improvement to the house or a new car or whatever the case may be. It might have been for a job or, you know, whatever. And you've curbed what you wanted to do after that. Because otherwise, you might end up a little bit like me in the sense that I curbed it and I started going for what I could get rather than what I wanted. And I've got to be honest, as a result of that experience, there have been times where I did go for what I wanted, and when it's attained, it's so much sweeter than any other success you can possibly imagine. This channel, for instance, is something that I wanted to do for a while, and I felt like it's tricky to balance sometimes with life, but you'll find time to do the things you want to do if you really want to do them, and that's true. I get a lot of criticism for this show. I'm always hesitant sometimes about putting stuff up because I know it's going to rub people up the wrong way, but that sense of rejection is something that's almost exhilarating. It makes me want to work harder for the next show and the next show and the next show and the next show. So debate in the comment section about that if you like. I'm happy to have an open debate about it, but I thought I'd talk about it. Anyway, moving on, because that's quite a somber topic. Let's switch it up to a comment that was left in one of my videos by a good friend. He's becoming a very, very good friend. We're messaging now. We're becoming buddies. Topic on my last video with regards to gaming disappointments or letdowns in gaming. I was asked to talk about downloadable content for gaming in terms of its impact on the gaming world, positive and negative, and things and all things in between. And the point was raised that perhaps gamers as a whole focus too much on the negative sides. I'm really sorry about the itching of the nose. This is why sometimes I don't film, because then it ruins the illusion, especially on a podcast when I can't edit that out. Anyway, back on topic. Downloadable content. The point I was trying to make, I wasn't saying it's necessarily negative. I think that's maybe been misconstrued in the video. But downloadable content is a concept and idea that at the moment is being utilized in the wrong ways by the biggest people. And that's unfortunately how you set trends that smaller companies have no choice but to follow in order to stay competitive and in order to stay afloat. So the case in point that everyone's aware of at the moment is Battlefront 2. EA have taken over the Star Wars license, and they've started implementing their same techniques that have been successful in things like FIFA and Madden and all this sort of business in a admittedly multiplayer online based game. People don't really understand this. Battlefront is really a multiplayer game. That's the reason why you play it. If you play it for a single player story experience, if you want a satisfying single player story experience in Star Wars, there's plenty of games that do that. First person shooters, Star Wars, again, there's plenty of games that do that. And if you want just a satisfying story experience, maybe watch the films. But as far as DLC goes, this is my concern, and this is the point that I made in my reply. If we were to look at gaming as cars, and you want to look at movies as something like a motorcycle, okay, why do I make that comparison? Well, it's simple. With a car, it's a similar type of experience, i.e. it's entertainment, it's immersion, it's fantasy, it's escapism, but it's more interactive. It does more for the person who's purchasing it, whereas a bike will do, broadly speaking, the same thing, but it is much more focused in terms of its application. You can't change the outcome of a film. You can't, if you add stuff into a film afterwards, it might change the experience overall, but it's certainly not something that you wouldn't have gotten in the first place, because that's the way the filmmaker chose to release it. That's why you have director's cuts and extended editions if you want to buy them. You don't have to buy them, and it doesn't necessarily improve or detract from the experience. It's just a different kind of experience. With gaming, obviously there's a degree of interaction, there's storytelling, there's music, there's effects, there's different sensations, and it's just a much more immersive experience. And plus, obviously, you get more time with the game. Broadly speaking, a film, the most you're ever going to get out of a film is 3.5 hours. The most. Maybe 4. Some films, I think, might stretch that far. With a game, I'd be disappointed if a game doesn't last me 10 to 12 hours. If it doesn't last me that long, I would deem it to be somewhat of an inadequate purchase. Full release, by the way, on consoles. On handhelds and PCs, I don't know so much because I'm not a big gamer for those. But coming back to the point. So you're talking about two products that fulfill a similar purpose, albeit in different ways, and give you different experiences. And let's say, for the sake of argument, that on this car that you're buying, they sell you this car, but they don't include the price of doors. And they make the argument, well, it doesn't really change your experience. It's you know, you can buy the doors if you want. You don't have to buy the doors if you don't want to. And true, you can still use a car and get some enjoyment out of it, but it's not the product you're paying for. Now, rewind 20 years when I first started gaming. When you bought a game, you expected a finished product. If it did well enough, you got a sequel. And that was when you exhibited the ability to be able to improve graphics. It meant that the emphasis was always on making as good a game as you could then, making your money, then having enough money with enough profit to make a second game and make it even better, and then sell more, and then improve on that one, and then reinvest in the product to make it better and better and better and better. That's how most developing businesses work. This is why people don't understand that gaming and business share this comparison. Now, gaming culture these days is very much of the mobile gaming variety, in that you are incentivized to play. You are incentivized to buy additional items for your game. So collector's editions, not DLC, I grant you that, but I'm going off tangent, stay with me here. Collector's editions, special editions, extended editions, multiple DLC packs that last the course of 2, maybe even 3 years, depending on the cycle of a game. These are things that didn't exist 20 years ago, but they got gaming to this point without the need to convince gamers that what you're getting isn't the full experience, and that's okay. We're going to keep selling it to you down the line. Now, there are some examples of this where that isn't the case, and that's why I'm not arguing that DLC in of itself is a bad idea. Case in point is a game I've recently completed, The Witcher 3. Now, I don't know what the expansions cost when they were released, to be perfectly honest with you, because I waited, didn't buy the game straight away, waited for the reviews to come out and waited for the DLC packs to come out, and bought the package. And I've got to be honest, I paid, obviously via Xbox Live, I paid £15 for it. £15 for what I would consider to be one of the greatest games of all time. And the DLC packages did what DLC packages should do in my mind. They should provide you with more of the same high quality of experience, not additional experiences. Why would I pay to sit down in a film, for instance, and then cut out a chunk at the end and tell me, don't worry, you can watch the rest of the film, but you're going to have to pay for it? Now, I've heard the argument from Total Biscuit, and I would imagine my good friend over at Defunct Games would probably proffer the same argument, which is, it's not the same. The used game market and trade-ins and things like that limit the, and because you can't diversify the income of a game, whereas a film, you can have toys and you can have spin-off shows and yada yada yada. And I understand that to a degree. But here's where I do make the argument. They're priced commensurately. a film is about a quarter of the price of a game, because a game provides you probably 4 times the experience. But where in the trail of thought there does it give them license to start taking things out that they should have prepared the game for in the first place? And this is why I warn of the dangers of DLC, because DLC opens the door for developers to decide what kind of experience they want to provide gamers. They're deciding now. They could make an amazing game. They're choosing to make an amazing game in chunks and selling it to you in pieces to sustain a level of income. If you're that strapped for cash, maybe don't put so much production value in your game, or work harder. Gaming developers prior to that had to work bloody hard to make their games iconic, memorable, innovative, and they had to diversify what they could do to be competitive within the space. Now these days there are millions of games, hundreds of thousands of different titles across different genres, with Steam being the epicenter of development there, because pretty much anyone can decide to be a developer now, make something, so long as it's tangible and at least sort of passes for a game, they can get it on there. But the large developers, I expect more. It's the reason why I'm so harsh on FIFA, because yes, it's an experience that's pretty good. Yes, I tend to get FIFA every year, usually as a present, but I don't sit there and go, no, I'm not going to play it. I have a game of FIFA every now and then because it's so mind-numbingly easy. It's a veg game. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to get stressed about it if you don't want to. But the level of innovation that they actually employ into these games, the amount that they offer you in terms of an experience of an improved version of the previous one, is laughably low, pitifully low. And the main reason is because its clientele are perfectly happy to accept that. And that makes me sad in a way I can never fully express, not by a video, not by a tweet or a post, because there's no convincing them. You can't convince an audience that they deserve better when they're satisfied with what they've already got. And to a degree you can't argue with that. If an audience is willing to pay for packs of star cards in Battlefront 2, if they're happy to pay for packs in FIFA, if they're happy to pay for expansions to an otherwise unfinished game, i.e. Destiny, or whatever the case may be, then fair enough. That's where we're going as an industry, and that's what will be dictated to by the younger generation, who are perfectly happy to invest more money in experience they should have gotten, not for free, they should have paid for it up front and gotten it up front. Now, if that's the antiquated way of looking at gaming, then that's where we just differ on this argument, because DLC is something that I think people should look at through, like I said, the prism of more of the same experience. If I played a game to completion and I don't want to wait for the next installment, I like this edition, I like this version, I just want more of it, I want more chapters, I want more story, then I'm happy with that, because that's something I wouldn't have gotten otherwise. And if the game makes enough money to be able to warrant adding DLC, or they want to incentivize you by saying, don't worry, if you play through this experience, you like it, there's DLC packs coming, albeit that they will be at cost, I'm perfectly happy to support that, because that encourages the making a game so good you want more of that game. Not to make a game that is incomplete and requires you to spend more money making it good. To say FIFA is a good game is an understatement if you were to take out the money, because then you're talking about a gameplay system that rewards replayability to the maximum level, interactivity, all the rest of that jazz. But because it asks you to spend real world money buying players, that in the career mode you don't have to. Which, by the way, I'm suspecting that day is coming where microtransactions are going to make the way into a story game, which I think, if I'm not mistaken, has already happened with, I think it's Shadow of War, the sequel to Shadow of Mordor. Microtransactions in a single player experience. What the actual fuck? You're selling us a game, okay? You've had the money up front to make the thing. and to determine your profit margin. You can sell it at whatever you want. If you want to sell it for stupid money and people still buy it because it's a great experience, fine. If you sell it for $60 in America, or 40 or 50, 60 pounds here in England, fine. But then don't say, oh, by the way, you can. We've made it deliberately hard in certain instances, so you have to buy more. That's not fair. It's not moral. It's not ethical. And the reason why, again, I get that people say it's gambling with the Battlefront system, because it is. There's no incentive versus reward system. Sorry, there's no play reward system that actually works. It's randomly generated, so you could spend a lot of money and not get anything. But the law of averages dictates that sooner or later you're going to get something. It's just a dangerous slope we find ourselves going down, and a level of acceptability that was bred in mobile games through a generation of people that interact predominantly through their mobiles. So it's become acceptable to them when they were young. They're now gaming at an older age, teenage age, when we all first started getting into gaming, and they see it as perfectly acceptable, when it isn't. It's never acceptable to take something that you did before, gut it, sell the original piece to you, and then the rest of it after the fact for more money, when you should have gotten that experience as a whole in the first place. So, again, in a long-winded way, that's my response to the DLC argument, but maybe one day I'll put a more eloquated version as a review or as a topic of discussion on a weekly show or something like that, where I'll cite references to different games that I believe do DLC well or performed well without DLC, versus games that have DLC needlessly and are actively hurting the gaming community as a whole. Because you look at it, it's a bubble and it's going to burst at some point. It's not a medium that's secure and safe like people think. Oh, well, film's been going for 100 years. Everything's got its limit. Everything's got its upper shelf. So just be wary of that. Anyway, podcast has been going for about 26 minutes. So let's touch on a couple of quick things very real quick. So as far as Arsenal is concerned, boo. 1-0 to Spurs today. Very, very disappointing. But I've not seen the game and I've not seen the highlights. I saw the games play by play while I was I was working. I was definitely working. I wasn't looking at the scores. You can't prove it. Doesn't matter if I admit to it or not. Okay, I was reading it. But anyway, point being, it just looks like a very disappointing performance, considering the array of attacking talent we've got. I know that Rambo was off with a groin injury, but that's still not really an excuse considering the array of attacking talent. Lacazette, the hate he's getting at the moment is almost ridiculous. I feel bad for any Arsenal supporter that thinks, oh yeah, hey, quality striker. He's just going through a confidence lull because he's not used to being at a club with the kind of pressure and the kind of fucking nihilism that Arsenal fans have. Cheer up. There's always next year, there's always the League Cup final, and there's always the Europa. So cheer the fuck up and just be happy you're Arsenal fans, okay? Even if Spurs finish above us this season, hey, who gives a shit? They're not winning anything. They're not winning any contests, and let's all be honest with ourselves. Unless they win something, do you really expect Kane to stick around? Do you really expect Alderweireld? I forget. Ali to stick around? We won't be commenting on the Ali situation just because, hey, it is what it is. I don't, put it this way, if you don't want people spreading that sort of shit, maybe don't record it in the first place. But at the same time, I think people have a right to demand a degree of privacy. So the fact that people are hacking other people's shit is the thing we should all be admonishing here. That he's just a victim of something ultimately, and that is what it is. But the fact that he's been hacked and that people continue to be hacked is the real problem, because everyone deserves, quite frankly, a degree of privacy in an age where you are not entitled to your privacy. Now more than ever, it's valuable as fuck. So that's that. As far as wrestling is concerned, I know that they've been talking a lot about the Rousey thing and the Vince McMahon thing. I'll probably do a separate podcast on this in the next couple of days, talking about wrestling, just so as not to bore people here. I've already gone on 2 topics at fairly long length. That made no sense. As far as Halcyon goes, couple of new videos recorded. Just need to edit them together, so you'll get a new one next week. It's probably going to be a blink, but there's a couple of top 5s that are also ready and need editing. You'll get another podcast next week as well, so I hope you stick around for that. Just want to give a very big shout out at the moment to a few people. So GFY Productions, if you haven't already, go across to his channel, check him out. He produces content of a wide variety, who I would be delighted to get on one of these podcasts at some point, just because I think that would be the best format. I'd also very much like you to go out and check out Web of Cain. He's a young YouTuber who's been supporting me recently. Brother, appreciate you watching. Thank you very much. Crow, Let's Plays, predominantly PC games. Does a lot of recordings, not on camera very much. I mean, I'm curious to see what my man looks like, but he wants to remain mysterious behind the camera. He's not as fucking camera hungry as me, so you've got to appreciate that. Obviously Defunct Games, I don't give him enough shout outs because his channel is monstrous compared to mine, but still, if you've never checked out Defunct Games, I would urge you to do so. Sexy as hell videos, well produced. He narrates them to an almost laughably professional degree, makes my channel look like a pile of crap, which is why I appreciate you all watching, by the way. I'm being told that I need to improve my presentation by being more happy with my presentation, but I'm a perfectionist, so I look at my channel and it makes me cringe sometimes because I think it could be so much better and it should be so much better. It's much better in my head. It's on the thing now and it's not as good, but that means that I'm looking down on the people that do like my channel, which I don't want to do. But I hope people that watch and sometimes get it confused, like why I hate on myself, presentation style or the way the show comes across, it's just because I want it to be as good as it can be. And I look at it sometimes and I think, not as good as it could be. It's the same way when I used to paint. People will tell you I never used to like finishing an artwork or a portrait because it just never looked good enough to me. It always looked terrible, even though people used to say I was a decent artist. So swings and roundabouts, really. As far as anything else goes, we'll cap it off here. Half an hour, I think, is about long enough for a podcast. So anything else, check out my Twitter, @LorneRisley, simple to find. I'm usually tweeting about stuff there. I think I've got another idea for a podcast I'd like to talk about in an open format as well in the next couple of days about something that happened. Again, another epiphany that I may have had that I just want to flush out a little bit more, and it probably serves to be done in a podcast segment. So as far as WWE is concerned, any more football talk or boxing talk or MMA talk, I'll save that to the podcast in the middle of the week. In the meantime, I hope you guys are taking care of yourselves, especially if you're in the UK. This weather is absolutely terrible. It's supposed to be getting worse, so please do wrap up. Don't get that flu and don't come near me if you do. So thank you very much again for listening or watching. Take care of yourselves. And hopefully if you've checked out some of my other content recently, please remember to share. I appreciate the likes, I appreciate the comments, but if my channel's going to grow, I need it to be seen by as many people as possible, and there's only so much promotion I can do, so it would mean the absolute world to me if you wouldn't mind just clicking that share button. Just do it once on one video that you think your friends and family aren't going to tear you to pieces for sharing, and that's all I ask of you, and I'd really appreciate it. So, once you've done that, consider that your good deed for the day. Please take care of yourselves, and I'll see you guys on the next Halcyon Podcast.